Hello and welcome to Cooking Corners, and this week we're looking at the most versatile and aromatic of plants, a fairly recent addition to the list of Australian agricultural produce, but nevertheless a great favourite today, ginger. And in the studio to tell us all about it is Jennifer Johnson.
Ginger is one of my personal favourite spices, and I've got a number of wonderful recipes to share with you later on in the programme. So, what is ginger? Well, actually, it's a spicy tasting root with an aromatic flavour. It's related to the bamboo family and has 100 different uses in the kitchen. The Chinese have cultivated it for years, particularly to use in medicine, though you are probably more familiar with its culinary uses. But first, let's take a brief look at its history before we look at how it can be used, because it has a very interesting history. Ginger originated in the southern provinces of China and in India, where it had been used in medicine and food for over 5,000 years. The early traders who came upon the plant took it to many parts of the world, such as Nigeria, the West Indies, Central America, East Africa, and even Indonesia. Ginger became extremely popular because of its exotic aromatic properties and was highly valued by spice traders in the 17th and 18th centuries because they were able to sell it back in Europe for a very good price. Although Australia is now the largest producer of ginger in the world, it wasn't grown in Australia until the early 20th century. Apparently, some pieces of raw ginger found their way to an area about 100 kilometres north of Brisbane in Queensland earlier this century. The comparatively high rainfall and humidity in this area produced conditions which are perfect for growing ginger, so it became well established. But in the early days, the relatively high cost of production placed it as a disadvantage in the market by comparison with the much cheaper ginger produced by other countries with lower production costs. Then, in 1941, the supply of ginger to Australia started to run out. Remember, this was in the middle of the Second World War when everything was in short supply. This provided a perfect opportunity for the Queensland growers to expand their production and sales. 5 local farmers got together and formed a cooperative association in a place called Buderim. They started with only £25 between them. That was in the days when Australian currency was pounds, not dollars. So, they set up a company with 2 wooden vats and 14 tons of raw ginger, but they went on to become the most successful ginger farmers in the world. In fact, nearly all the world ginger now comes from the Buderim Ginger Factory in Queensland. 40% of the production is used in Australia, and the remaining 60% is exported overseas to places like Europe, North America, South Africa, and even to Asia, where it originated in the first place. So now, let's move on to look at ways of using ginger in the kitchen.
To the guide for the Peak District. Situated in the heart of England and covering parts of 6 counties, the Peak District is a place of outstanding natural beauty. It is just 5 miles from the Sheffield city centre. A short break or longer holiday will allow you to explore some of England's most spectacular scenery, and in the towns, villages and hamlets, amongst the prettiest in the country, you will find a warm and genuine welcome wherever you go. Every taste is catered for, and many exciting activities are available. Here are some highlights of the most popular places to visit. For the most active people, the following areas offer you excellent opportunities for walking, strolling, rock climbing, caving, cycling, and hang gliding. The first place I'd like to introduce you to is Bakewell. This beautiful little town is renowned for a certain local delicacy, the famous Bakewell pudding. It's very delicious. And steeped in history, Bakewell's oldest building dates back to Henry VIII's reign. Just south of the town is the medieval Haddon Hall, a magnificent Tudor manor house complete with gardens, heralded as the most romantic in England. On Sheffield's doorstep lies the Palace of the Peak. Chatsworth is quite possibly the UK's most stunning country house and a must-see for any visitor. The magnificent ground alone, with their formal gardens, fountains and maze, are worth a visit. At the heart of the Peak District lies the Peak District National Park, the first of Britain's national parks, established in 1951 to safeguard and preserve this beautiful region, not only for future generations, but also for visitors others to enjoy in the present. Whether you're exploring, getting out in the great outdoors, or simply relaxing, experience the Peak District and the Peak District National Park. You will be taking home wonderful memories. A regular train service from Sheffield travels through the scenic Hope Valley, home to the charming villages of Hathersage, Edhill and Castleton. Hathersage is the final resting place of Little John, while Edhill marks the official start of the Pennine Way. Castleton has some of the greatest show caverns in Europe and the only surviving Norman Keep in Derbyshire. The most famous cavern is Blue John Cavern. The natural water-worn caverns are home to 8 of the 14 known varieties of stunning blue Joan stone, which can be seen in its natural state among stalactites and stalagmites. Further south, the craggly gritstone edges and limestone valleys of the Derbyshire Dales offer endless opportunities for walking and cycling. Please be aware that all children must be accompanied by an adult. There, many charming villages and larger market towns are famous for specialist shops offering everything from handmade chocolates and ceramics to antiques, designer clothing and equipment to tackle the great outdoors. You could pick up some wonderful souvenirs for your friends. Perhaps the most magnificent and certainly the best known stately home in England, Chatsworth, is home to a private art collection which represents 4,000 years of European culture and craftsmanship, from ancient Greece to modern works by British artists. Everything about Chatsworth is on an impressive scale, from the sumptuous interiors to the breathtaking gardens, and the 1,000-acre Capability Brown designed estate is one of the most beautiful and historic man-made landscapes in Britain. The last resort I hope to recommend you is the beautiful village of Eyam, where there is a tragic tale. In 1665, a tailor in this small village received some cloth ridden with infected fleas from London. The village decided to quarantine itself, but a third of the villagers died. That is known as the famous Plague Village. There are several reminders of this dramatic event, and Eyam Hall tells a vivid story of those fearful months. Eyam Hall is a small but charming 17th century manor house with a cafe and craft workshops in the centre of Eyam. It has been over 50 years since Britain's first national park was established in 1951. Every year, lots of visitors from all over the world come here to relax and enjoy the natural beauty. So if you feel tired, bored about your work, study, or even the city life,
welcome to our program on Indian youth. Are young Indians different from their elders? Smarter, lazier, less obedient? We have invited an Indian sociologist, Mr. Singh, to share his views with us. Mr. Singh, many Indians complain that the new generation of Indians is too westernized and has lost touch with its culture. What's your opinion on that?
Whenever a country modernizes, there is speculation that the new generation will be dramatically different from those that preceded it, in particular more westernized. Much of that speculation is based on superficial observations regarding rock music and the like. However, most studies show that new generations retain much, though not all, of the core values of their culture. Cultures change very slowly. What is changing quickly is the environment in which they live, their living standards, opportunities for advancement, and self-fulfillment. Young Indians certainly have more opportunities today.
Where does your information come from?
I have 2 children in their early 20s. I see their generation at close quarters. I often travel to both rural and urban places in India, and I see the young people there. The current generation has, by and large, rejected politics as a primary concern. They have grown up with a TV and a telephone, either at home or in the vicinity. They have watched MTV, but they still go to the temple, and most of them seriously believe that God exists. Regarding the opportunities that Mr. Singh mentioned, for the first time, it is acceptable in India for a kid to say that he or she wants to be an actor, a singer, a fashion designer, a writer, a cricket player as a profession, without parents losing sleep. It also means that they have many choices of role model. When I look at young people around me, I see more hope than helplessness.
Mr. Singh, what is the main advantage that young people in India have?
The biggest advantage the youth of India have is mobility. It is very easy for them to move about the country and follow opportunities, an edge the Chinese youth, for example, do not currently have. Also, young Indians are quickly adapting to new technologies, and English is now being more widely accepted and spoken than ever before. India's youth have a very unique advantage, a combination of mobility, language, and knowledge of technology. Add to that a country that has an entrepreneurial spirit and a very clear intent to adapt to Western culture.
Are there any problems as far as you can see?
I think that the biggest overall problem is with infrastructure. But as far as things that directly affect the younger generation are concerned, I think that the main problem is that parents from the growing middle class are pushing their children ever harder at academic activities. They believe this is the only way to stand out and survive in a system which is cutthroat because of the exploding population and as education becomes more and more accessible to the masses. However, many parents are granting their children more choice, particularly in the area of choosing their own careers. The youth of today are definitely more aware of the choices available to them.
Do you think that competition is a problem?
Not at all. It leads to creativity. The younger generation is more creative. Competition ensures that creativity is likely to be the best way to get ahead, though it is largely believed that the culture and value system torch-bearing youth are losing their way. I still believe that relates to a small percentage. The combination of the Indian value system and the Western approach is a winning one, and if the Indian youth can manage to achieve the right balance, global organizations will want their skills.
Mr. Singh, you sound very confident.
I am. Every generation will experience change. This will be more dramatic, especially in the context of development. Simply put, young Indians are more aware about the world they live in. They are more materialistic. They are consumers in the true sense. They are exposed to satellite TV, the internet, freer access to social interaction and mobility. They are global citizens. Adoption of styles and fashion from anywhere, particularly America, is quick, but as several surveys have shown, this openness and confidence does come with some sense of humility and purpose. I feel confident that they can dream and achieve. My generation could only dream.
I'd like to welcome you to the presentation. It's nice to see so many of you here, and I hope that everybody ends up with suitable employment as a result of attending. Now, as you know, we at Select Hotel Recruitment are able to offer a range of work at the better hotels in the area. This month is no exception, and I'll take you through some of what we have on offer. The first job is reception assistant, and there are 3 vacancies for this position at the Park Hotel. This is quite a varied job, and in fact I should point out that at certain times of the day it will involve heavy lifting when guests' luggage arrives or perhaps deliveries come in, so bear that in mind when deciding whether to apply for this post. The Park Hotel has quite an international flavour, so you'll need to speak at least 2 foreign languages. Many guests, of course, travel by car, and you may have to take their vehicles around to the car park, so you will need to have a valid driving licence, and you will not be allowed to do the job if you haven't. They also say that basic computer skills, such as word processing, would be an advantage, although this isn't a requirement. OK, now, the next job is general assistant, and there are 4 vacancies for this at the Avenue Hotel. To be honest, the pay is rather low, but there are compensatory factors that you should bear in mind when considering whether to apply. The hotel will provide you with all your meals while you're working, and they will also train you in all the aspects of the job and then issue you with a certificate, which, of course, could be very valuable to you in the future. Right. The third job on offer is catering assistant, and Hotel 56 are looking for 4 people to fill these vacancies at their smart new premises. As you know, this hotel is popular with exclusive travellers, and so you'll need to wear the distinctive staff uniform, which you're provided with. Don't consider this job unless you're fairly flexible about when you work, as the hotel will require you to work nights for this job, and you'll need to travel to and from the hotel as it's situated just outside the city. Well, that's some basic information about the opportunities we currently have on offer. Now, if you would like to apply for one of these jobs, you'll need to follow our recruitment process. It might seem complicated, but we guarantee the hotels we work with to provide carefully vetted staff. So, the first thing you'll need to do is fill in one of these, a personal information form. It's pretty straightforward and should only take you a few minutes. Once you've done that and handed it in, we'll give you a questionnaire about your skills to do. Again, I don't expect this to take you very long. We then look through the information about you and pass on our recommendations to the relevant hotel. Hopefully you'll be accepted by your chosen hotel. Assuming you are, you will then proceed to the next step of the process and attend a general course of training. This is designed to be helpful and realistic, so an important part of the course is role-play activities. You should have some fun while you learn. OK, and after that, the final step is that you'll be contacted by the hotel you're going to work for, and they'll post you a video about themselves and the work involved. Watching this will constitute further specific training for your job. Well, I hope that's reasonably clear at this stage. Are there any questions on what I've said so far?
Today I have with me Sandy Richardson of the local Workforce Center, and she'll be talking about that critical step towards the goal of employment, the interview. Sandy, what is an interview for, and what's the best way to approach it?
A job interview is simply a meeting between you and a potential employer to discuss your qualifications and see if there is a fit. The employer wants to verify what they know about you and talk about your qualifications. If you have been called for an interview, you can assume that the employer is interested in you. The employer has a need that you may be able to meet, so it's your goal to identify that need and convince the employer that you're the one for the job. As everyone knows, interviews can be stressful, but when you're well prepared, there's no reason to panic. Preparation is the key to success in a job search, and you can begin by collecting together all the documents you may need for the interview, such as extra copies of your resume, lists of references, and letters of recommendation. You could also take some work samples, selecting from what you have designed, drawn, or written, for instance. And make sure you have a pen and pad of paper for taking notes. The next step is to find out about the post. The more you know about the job, the employer, and the industry, the better prepared you will be to target your qualifications. Always request a job description from the employer and research employer profiles at the Chamber of Commerce or local library. You could also try to network with people who work for the company or with employees of companies associated with it. The next step is to match your qualifications to the requirements of the job. A good approach is to write out your qualifications along with the job requirements. Think about some standard interview questions and how you might respond. Most questions are designed to find out more about you, your qualifications, or to test your reactions in a given situation. If you don't have any experience or skills in a required area, think about how you might compensate for those deficiencies. During an interview, it's important that you be yourself. Get a good night's sleep and plan your travel to be there in plenty of time so that you're not arriving out of breath with 30 seconds to spare. Don't, though, present yourself for the interview too early, 10 minutes at most. In the interview, listen carefully to each question asked. Take your time in responding and make sure your answers are positive. It's important to express a good attitude and show that you're willing to work, eager to learn, and are flexible. If you are unsure of a question, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. In fact, it's sometimes a good strategy to close a response with a question for the interviewer. In general, focus on your qualifications and look for opportunities to personalize the interview. Briefly answer questions with examples of how you responded in comparable situations, from either your life or previous job experiences. Something you should avoid are yes or no responses to questions. But don't dwell too long on non-job related topics. Use caution if you are questioned about your salary requirements. The best strategy is to avoid the question until you have been offered a job. Questions about salary asked before there is a job offer are usually screening questions that may eliminate you from consideration, so be warned. On the other hand, it isn't inappropriate to show your enthusiasm if your first impressions of the interview and of the employer are good ones. So, if the job sounds like what you are looking for, say so. Keep in mind that the interview is not over when you are asked if you have any questions. Come prepared to ask a couple of specific questions that again show your knowledge and interest in the job. Close the interview in the same friendly, positive manner in which you started. When the interview is over, leave promptly. Don't overstay your time. Think about the interview and learn from the experience. Evaluate the success and failures. The more you learn from the interview, the easier the next one will become. You'll become much more confident. To close, here are a few more tips. First, maintain good eye contact throughout the interview and be aware of nonverbal body language. Second, dress a step above what you would wear on the job. Go to the hairdressers, have a shave, etc. Remember that your appearance is a key indicator of whether you have the right attitude, so it can pay to give some thought to how you look. And finally, don't be a clock watcher.
and welcome to one of the Hong Kong's bank's lectures on money management. I'm John Rogers, and I'm the manager here. Money, they say, makes the world go round. Well, it is true that your world can come to a grinding halt if you have no money. I know you all agree, because that is why you have come here today. Okay, money. What do we want to do with it? Most people want to enjoy the money they earn today, but also put some aside for a rainy day, the kids' education, that big house in the country you've always dreamed of, and, of course, retirement. In other words, they want to invest it. So let's talk for a little while on spending money wisely today, and then I'll talk about the various types of investment you can make. The first question is, how much of your income should you enjoy spending today, and how much should you save for the future? And the answer is different for different people. It depends on things like age, your health, how many children you have, etc. Well, my initial answer is, write out a budget for the necessities: food, rent, mortgage, and loan payments, clothing, health insurance, things like that. When most people do this, they say to themselves, my goodness, I really only need to spend £1,500 a month. So how come I always spend nearly £2,500? My mother used to tell me, look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. What to do? Discipline. I suggest you take out the cash you need every week from the bank and keep a record of what you buy with your credit card. And you must strictly limit what you spend every month to, for example, your budget for essentials, plus an amount, say 10%, for a bit of entertainment if you want, and the unexpected, like house repairs, that birthday present you forgot about, things like that. If after 3 weeks you find that you have nearly spent your budget for the month, then stay at home for a week. No fancy restaurants or drinking with the boys. As they say, there's no free lunch. Okay, so what do you do with the money you don't spend? Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. It's a good idea to always have some money in a current deposit at the bank in case of big surprises, say 1,000 or so. Don't be tempted to use your credit card unless you absolutely have to, and get that safety cushion back in the bank as soon as you can. Right. So, what should you invest in? The list is endless. Real estate, stocks, and shares, equity funds. Did I hear someone say gambling? Well, if you have a crystal ball, maybe. The government lottery? Someone once described it as a voluntary tax on fools. But I must admit I spend £1 or £2 on it every week, but no more. It brings a little bit of excitement into my life, even though I know I have a better chance of being struck by lightning than winning. Okay, let's start off with a basic principle. In general, the higher the potential for making a fortune by buying shares of a particular company, the one you have been told will be the next IBM in 3 weeks, the higher the risk. We've all heard about the dot-com bubble of several years ago. Some people made a fortune, but they got out before the market crashed. The majority of investors lost their shirts. Another basic principle, the balanced portfolio. A balanced portfolio means you have investments in a variety of things, from low-risk but low-return things to things like blue-chip stocks that are somewhat less predictable, but which will probably provide steady, if not spectacular, returns for years, to the riskiest of all, venture capital, where success could increase the value of your investment 100-fold, or failure could wipe it out. Why don't we break for a coffee now? Then I will talk about the most common form of share ownership, common stock, which makes you become a part owner of the company itself with voting rights and entitlement to dividend distribution if there is one.
And welcome to our weekly series on home improvements. Today's program is about do-it-yourself house painting. There's never been a better time for people who like to do their own interior house painting. Although people still lead very busy lives, thanks to the availability of various new DIY materials, you can now decorate your home in a more efficient and a more environmentally friendly way. In 2009 alone, approximately 53 million litres of the paint that was sold in the UK were left untouched, That's enough to fill 21 Olympic-sized swimming pools. It's easy to overestimate how much paint you'll need to decorate your room if you use guesswork. And if you know exactly how much paint is needed, you avoid unnecessary waste. There are automatic paint calculators available now. Most of the major paint manufacturers provide them. Look on their websites or just Google paint calculator and see what comes up. Then simply measure the circumference and height of the room in meters, enter this into the calculator along with the type of surface you're painting, and it will tell you how many litres of paint you'll need. But if you do end up with leftover paint, you can donate it to an organisation like Community Repaint. They will take the paint from you and redistribute it to local charities and voluntary organisations, so it goes to a good home. You can find more information about Community Repaint on communityrepaint, all one word, .org.uk. Another way of avoiding paint wastage is to check you're completely happy with your colour choice before starting to paint. For example, you can get a small sample of the colour you're thinking of using, then paint a board and move it around the room so you can see how it looks against your furnishings and in different lights. Also, it's always better to buy high-quality paints because you get what you pay for. If you buy cheap paint, you might need to apply 2 or 3 coats to achieve the same coverage that you'd get from 1 coat of a good quality paint. You could also spend a week on a job that could have been done in a day or 2. And consider the environment. Most paint manufacturers now sell water-based paints that don't contain harmful chemicals or give off harmful odours, so get one of these. You can also buy paint that's packaged in recyclable containers. There's a lot more choice than there used to be. You can only do a good job, which will last, if you prepare the surfaces thoroughly before painting. In fact, in many ways, if you want to do a professional-looking job, this is more important than the painting itself. If there are any cracks or patches of loose plaster, painting over them won't solve the problem. Take the plaster out and fill the holes, allowing enough time for the new plaster to dry. And you won't get a smooth finish if the walls are dusty or greasy, so washing with water isn't enough. Use a solution of decorator's soap and rinse well with warm water afterwards. When you're ready to paint, we suggest you use a medium pile roller for walls and ceilings. A lot of people tend to use short pile rollers, but these give a patchy finish, and that wastes paint and time. Similarly, long pile rollers can create a thick textured effect, which looks messy. The same goes for brushes. The stronger the bristles, the easier they are to wash and reuse. And as you've chosen a water-based paint, clean your brushes with cold water because it's more energy efficient that way. As you're decorating, keep transferring small amounts of paint into a tray and keep topping it up when you need to. This reduces the chance of it being contaminated by dust and pieces of dirt. And finally, water-based paint doesn't have a lingering smell, so that's not an issue anymore. But it's airflow rather than heat that helps the paint dry quicker. So, to help finish the job in the quickest time, leave your doors and windows open. The faster the paint is dry and the job finished, the quicker you can start enjoying your room.
Welcome to Canberra's Park Podcast. In the next few minutes, I'll tell you a little about the park and the amazing things we have to offer. We like to think that Canberra's offers more than other theme parks. Like them, we have a variety of exciting rides for people of all ages, but Canberra's also places strong emphasis on the educational experience for its visitors. Not boring facts, but lots of interactive exhibit. Although it's mainly an outdoor experience, we do have some indoor activities if the weather gets too dreadful. The park's got a lovely, well-established feel, set in 80 acres of beautiful countryside, about 3 miles south of the tourist resort of Dulchester. The park was set up in 1997 by the Camber family, but then taken over by new owners in 2004, who have maintained the original vision of the Cambers. It has lots of old trees, hundreds of flower beds, and a gorgeous lake. Cambers has over 45 different rides, exhibits, and arcades. All but one of these is free once you've paid your entrance fee. We charge a small fee for our newest fast ride to reduce the length of the queues. You don't pay anything for parking. A family ticket for a family of 4 works out at about £8 per person, which is amazing value. Full details of current prices are shown on our website, along with full details of rides, etc., and directions for getting to us. We also have a number of special offers. For example, if you live locally, why not join our Adventurers Club, which entitles you to 50% off ticket prices all year round, and a special lane for all rides and exhibits, which means you don't have to wait to get into any part of the park. See the offers tab on the website. We've recently added a number of new exhibits to the park, and we're particularly proud of our future farm zone, which houses over 20 different species of animals, from chipmunks to dairy cows. The emphasis is on getting near to the animals. All of them can be petted, and you can buy food for feeding the animals. Many of our younger visitors say that this is the high point of their visit. And speaking of food, don't let the animals have all the fun. We have a total of 7 different catering outlets on the site. We're open 10 to 5:30 all year round, and cold drinks and snacks can be bought at any time during opening hours. And hot food is available most of the day in the Hungry Horse Cafe from 11 until 5, just half an hour before closing time. Now, we want all our visitors to have an exciting time when they come to the park, but our first priority must be safety. Parents and guardians know their children's behavior and capabilities, but here at the park we have set certain conditions for each of the rides to ensure that all visitors get the maximum enjoyment out of the experience and feel secure at all times. There are 4 major rides at park. Our newest ride is the River Adventure, which is designed to reproduce the experience of whitewater rafting. No amount of protective clothing would make any difference, so only go on this ride if you're prepared to get wet. Children under 8 can go on this ride, but all under 16s must have an adult with them. Not all of our rides are designed for thrills and spills. Our Jungle Gym roller coaster is a gentler version of the classic Loop-the-Loop, specially created for whole family enjoyment, from the smallest children to elderly grandparents, suitable for all levels of disability and health conditions. Carriages have comfortable seating for up to 8 people with safety belts for each passenger, which must be worn at all times. Sit back and enjoy the scenery. One of the best established and most popular of Canberra's rides is the massive Swoop slide. Whiz down the polished vertical slide, 9 meters in height, and scream to your heart's content. There are no age or height restrictions. Be careful though, you must have on long trousers so you won't get any speed burns. And then there's the famous Zip Go-Kart Stadium, with 16 karts, 8 for single drivers and 8 for kids preferring to ride along with mum, dad or carer. Take part in high-speed races in our specially designed Formula 1 style karts, but no bumping other karts please. All riders must be above 1.2 meters because they have to be able to reach the pedals, even in the shared karts. Full details of all safety features are available on our website at www.canberraspark.com. So come and make a day of it at Canberra's theme park.
We're really pleased that you're going to be joining us next week for your work placement. Now, each of you will already have met the member of museum staff assigned to supervise you. In this short talk today, I'll be giving you more general information which will be relevant to all 6 of you. Your normal working day is 9 to 5 p.m, but on Monday, because it's your first day, we'd like you to arrive at 9:15. Please note, though, that you'll finish at the usual time. A lot of you have been asking what you should wear for work. Well, you may have noticed that we're not exactly a formal institution, so you'd really be out of place if you wear smart attire like a suit. If you go out on a trip with us, then we'd like you to wear a museum cap. It has our logo on, and we feel it helps people recognize you. But on a day-to-day basis in the museum itself, we say put on your own casual clothing because you'll be doing lots of dusty, messy work. Now, we don't have an enormous number of rules, but work placement is an excellent preparation for the real world of work, and we expect you to be very punctual and reliable. If you're not well, or there's been a hold-up, then what we ask you to do is ring the museum receptionist. He will be in the museum well ahead of opening time, and he'll inform your own personal supervisor in the museum. If you're away for more than 1 day, we'll inform your school tutor. They'll obviously need to make a note of your absence and follow up if necessary. But most of all, we hope you really enjoy yourselves during the placement. Students say they have a lot of fun, whether it's working with kids in our art workshops held every Monday, or, the most popular, when they go out on our outreach work to residential homes, recording elderly people's memories of school days for our oral history project. So, we hope you feel excited by the prospect of starting next week and well prepared. Your personal supervisor will be there to help you with our health and safety requirements when you start next week, and your supervisors will also brief you about the background to the museum, summarising all the huge amount of information on our website. In the next couple of days, it might be worthwhile if you get hold of evaluations and other notes made by students who've worked with us before. You can get a lot of pointers from them. Now, before I finish today, I wanted to help you find your way around the museum. When you start next Monday, the first thing you'll need to do is sign in. Come through the main entrance and you'll see the main staircase straight ahead. To the right of this is the statue of the horse, and just behind that is a door. Go through that, and that's the sign-in office. Now, on the first day, you'll be working in Gallery 1. You'll find this as follows. In the central courtyard area, close to the entrance, there's a large chest where visitors put donations for the museum. The door just behind that leads to Gallery 1. The workshop you'll be taking part in starts at 11, but if you want to go in earlier, you can get the key and let yourself in. The key box is quite hard to find. Walk behind reception, and it's between the large gallery and the bookshop. I haven't mentioned breaks, lunch, etc. Unfortunately, our cafe's closed at the moment, so your best bet is to bring a packed lunch. We tend to have our sandwiches in the kitchen area. Go round the reception desk and you'll see a small circular cabinet. The door to the kitchen area is just behind that. Now, every day, we put up notices about what's happening in the museum. Your supervisor will brief you, but if you want to check up on details, look on our staff notice board. This is in the corner of the play area, at the back, on the wall of Gallery 3.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Roman Baths. My name's Amanda, and I'm your guide for today. Before we begin the tour, I'd like to point out that we have child carriers, free of charge of course, for those of you with young children, and I can see that there are 1 or 2 of you here this morning. It might make things a bit easier for you than using a pushchair. If you don't want to carry your coats and bags around with you, there is a cloakroom behind reception where they'll be quite safe. Also, should anyone want to use the bathroom, there's one here in the reception hall, opposite the ticket office, and another one by the shop where we end our tour, right by the exit. Having mentioned the shop, I should tell you that it's full of interesting things for you to remember your visit by. Posters, postcards, replicas of the Gorgon's head, the Haruspex stone, and the statues that you'll be seeing on your tour. There are also games, books and videos for children and other souvenirs. Our first stop will be the terrace, where you will get your first view of the baths. Now, the statues that line the terrace here are of Roman emperors, governors of Britain, and various military leaders. These aren't from Roman times either. In fact, they were sculpted in 1894, especially for the grand opening of the baths in 1897. But what you can see from here is only a fraction of the whole Roman bath site, which stretches below ground level under the surrounding streets and squares of the town. While we're here on the terrace, getting our first look at the baths, let me fill you in on a bit of the history. This site, with its hot springs, has long been seen as a sacred place, and the first people to build here were the Celts, and the shrine they built was dedicated to the goddess Sulis. Of course, back in those days they had no way of explaining how hot water came to be bubbling out of the ground, so they believed it to be the work of the gods. When the Romans came, they too built a temple here, and dedicated it to their goddess, Minerva. The bath you can see from here is called the Great Bath. Not very imaginative, I know, but it is the biggest. Impressive, isn't it? At one time it was housed in a huge vaulted hall 40 metres high, which for many people of the period must have been the largest building they'd ever seen in their lives. The bath itself is 1.6 metres deep, ideal for bathing, and has steps leading down to the water on all sides. The niches or alcoves you can see all around the bath would have had benches and possibly small tables for drinks and snacks. Not a bad way to spend your free time, relax, and tell yourself it's all good for your health. Let's move on to our next stop, the sacred spring. This is the heart of the site, where the hot water bubbles up from the ground at a temperature of 46 degrees centigrade. The water comes up from a depth of between roughly 2,500 and 4,500 metres, where geothermal energy raises the water temperature to between 64 degrees and 96 degrees. Over 1 million litres of this hot water rise up here every day, and as well as being hot, the water is rich in minerals, and it was thought it would cure various ailments and illnesses. In fact, people came here from all over the Roman Empire to try out its healing powers. Before we take a look at the changing rooms and saunas, which are known as the East Baths, and the plunge pools and heated rooms of the west part of the bathhouse, we'll pass through the site of the temple and the temple courtyard. Here we are. This temple is one of only 2 known classical Roman temples in Britain. The other is the Temple of Claudius at Colchester. This temple is said to date from the late 1st century AD, being built between 60 and 70 AD. But the original temple has been knocked about and added to over the centuries, and what you can see here are just bits of the original temple. Okay, shall we move on?